Gforce Software has just released MAP, a synthesizer sandbox for discovering brand new textures and sounds that have never been heard before. While creating MAP, Gforce took inspiration from old Serge and Buchla modular synthesizers. And I can't help but notice a similarity between MAP and the mighty Oberheim Matrix-12, which was designed to be an entirely modular synthesizer but still feel as simple as a traditional analog subtractive synth. And unlike other modular-style synthesizer plugins that have pages and patch cables, MAP has a brilliant one-screen interface that requires zero menu diving. MAP has over 300 presets in it, but I'm going to just play a few so you can get an idea of the types of sounds that can be created with it. So what's so special about MAP? I mean, we've all seen oscillators, filters, envelopes, LFOs, arpeggiators, color, delay, reverb before. So what's going on that makes the synthesizer sound so different? I'm going to give you guys the briefest, and I cannot stress this enough, the briefest tour of MAP. But if you want to dive into the nitty-gritty of making your own sounds, I'm going to put a link to a live stream at the end of this video, which goes super deep into making sounds with MAP. So that'll be a great resource if you want to see the real power of this instrument. But just to scratch the surface, let's look at the oscillators. So the initialized preset starts off with the saw pulse waves. I'm going to turn oscillator B off for this example, and we can hear that as we move the wave shape, it becomes more like a sawtooth. It's actually pulse waves stacked to sound like a sawtooth. And we have a bunch of other wavetables, I guess, that take inspiration. So for instance, this is more of an FM style wavetable. We also have Buchla style wave folding, classic PWM, so morphing from a sine wave to a saw wave for warmer type sounds, wave-shaped sawtooth waves, really aggressive nasal sounds, and then a pulse saw, sort of like on a Juno or something when you have both a sawtooth wave and a pulse wave on at the same time. So you can create PWM with sawtooth waves from a single oscillator. So far so good, right? We've got two oscillators, you can detune them. The mod oscillator is where things get super interesting. So I think the inspiration might be something like a mini mode, where you've got that third oscillator that could also be used as an LFO. But in this case, it's taken to a much greater extreme. So of course we could listen to the mod oscillator, and it has its own wavetables, which are actually different than the other two because this one's more optimized for clean modulation. But what's more interesting are all of the things you can do with it on or off. Like for instance, let's modulate the wave shape with shape mod, which is sending this oscillator to control the wave shape of oscillator 1. And it isn't doing that much, but we can take this down and now it's essentially an LFO with a key tracked rate. We can also use it in free mode, which is like an LFO but faster. And again, what we're hearing there is modulation of this wave shape via the mod oscillator. Or we can put it in LFO mode, and that's more what you'd expect, right? And we can change the wave shape here to get more interesting sounds. And all of this can be modulatable in this section right here. So if you're familiar with XLFO from previous Gforce products, it's kind of like they looked at that and what that was for anybody who hasn't seen a Gforce product before. It basically lets you modulate every single knob and parameter in the plugin with its own ADSR or LFO. The design philosophy is something like this, and it was overwhelming to me at first, and then I realized how smooth and intuitive it is. But if you think of a plugin like OBX that they make, it has all the hardwired routings of modulation from the original hardware, but then every single parameter can also be modified by its own LFO and ADSR. And so I think they looked at this and they're like, what if we just got rid of all the hard wirings and there was only one way to modulate, and that was with XLFO. So now every single parameter, whatever we clicked on last, can be modulated by one of three envelopes, one of three drawable LFOs, they're loopable as well, a noise source, the modulation wheel, velocity, aftertouch, key tracking, and it's fully MPE supporting. So you can do things like polyphonic aftertouch and all of that. So let's say we want to modulate the frequency of the mod oscillator, which right now is behaving like an LFO. We can do that by just moving this little fader here. So this is without. And then we can just bring that in. And then bring the sustain down here. So we can add some attack and decay, and we should hear some ramping up and down of that LFO speed. So you can see how insanely powerful this gets very quickly. And if you get confused or you're like, wait a second, what's going on with this patch because there's so much movement going on, we can actually open up this panel here and see the modulations we've done so far. So we've got the mod osc LFO being modulated by envelope C here, and a little goes a long way. We also have a noise oscillator, which is much more than it seems at first blush. Of course, it can do noise, different types of noise. But where it gets interesting is we have more organic noise sources like waves, wind, droplets, tape noise, vinyl crackling, and bit crush noise. And that's fun enough when you route it through the filters and everything, just as a sort of different, more organic texture. But again, this is super powerful because let's say we go with waves, for instance. The noise LFO, which is basically a sample and hold circuit, is pulling not from white noise now, but the sound of the ocean. So let's turn the noise oscillator off, oscillator A back on. I'm going to disable the modulation, which I can do by double-clicking here, so it should just be the standard oscillator. Doing some PWM. Let's bring the filter down. Nothing crazy, increase the resonance. And of course, Gforce makes the best filters in the business, and you're about to see why in a little bit. Let's modulate the frequency with the noise LFO. And by changing the slew rate here to squared off, we actually have sample and hold, but from the ocean. So a much more organic sort of sound, even though we're still getting this sort of electronic techno sample and hold type thing. I fear we're already getting lost in the sauce. The synthesizer is deceptively deep. Every single thing about it just goes so far, so fast. Let's open the filter up all the way again. We can apply frequency modulation from the mod oscillator, and because it's in a low frequency mode, it's going to just be like a very slow vibrato. Incredible range there. But let's put it into key mode, and now we can control that to get some incredible FM type sounds. So it's pretty crazy already. And then we can do the same thing with amplitude modulation, which I think is an underused sound designer's tool. And of course you can use both at the same time and the shape mod. So it gets insane really quick with just one oscillator. Okay, so let's just do some simple oscillator work real quick just so we can check out the filter. I'm going to double click oscillator B, which brings the volume to -6 dB. We have 2 saw pulses. You don't really hear much until you detune them. So because we have the wave shape all the way to 0%, it's a really warm type of sound. I want to check out filter FM. So this is where this plugin gets crazy. So let's bring the filter down till we're just getting those lowest frequencies, and then modulate the filter with envelope B. Let's look over there. Bring the attack all the way down, bring the decay to about like 7 seconds or so. And we just need to bring the sustain down. Not all the way to infinity because that changes the release behavior. And then add some release as well. So just slowly descending there. Now I want it to sound more analog, so we're going to go to the decay release curve here and bring that all the way down. And you can see how that made it more of an exponential fall there, like an analog synth would be. Sometimes you want a linear slope. For a lot of pads it sounds good, but for this I want it to sound a little bit more like one of my vintage synths. And again, if we open up the modulation here, we can see that filter B frequency is being modulated 100% by envelope B. So filter B is like your traditional analog subtractive multi-mode filter. We could change it between 2 and 4 poles here, and then blend between low pass, notch, band pass, high pass, all of that over here. Filter A is a really cool sort of EQ style filter, but it can also be like a low pass filter, which has its own resonance. So if you wanted more filters, you could do it here. And you could do cool things like create a notch filter that moves sort of like a phaser. So if we take the frequency here and then modulate this with an LFO, we could get that sort of notch sound without having to use the notch filter here. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So let's just get rid of that for now. Just again, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. The real secret to this plugin is the filter FM. And Gforce makes the most authentic analog sounding filters out of anybody in the game. So let's crank up the resonance. Oh, I've got that noise LFO. Let's turn that off. It's so realistic sounding. Now let's do the magic, which is the mod oscillator filter FM. So what this is like on the Matrix-12, a Kai AX60, Prophet 5, where you could route an oscillator to the filter, which creates this really beautiful sound. Let's take it even further. Totally gorgeous sound that is so underused in sound design. I just need a little release on this sound here. Sounds so good. Again, we can change that curve here with the decay release and attack curves. Envelope A is kind of the only thing that seems to be pre-wired. This is your amplitude envelope like you'd expect. What's interesting about filter FM is that as you increase it, it sort of opens the filter up, which is why we need a relatively low cutoff. Or rather, it spends half the time above the cutoff and half the time below, because that's what an oscillator does. It goes up and down, right? So as you increase this, it kind of sounds like the filter's opening, but in a different way. So we don't need a whole lot of it. In fact, a trick I did on my Matrix 6 all the time was to use a little filter FM to give it that sort of Oberheiming growl. It was a way to cheat a little bit more attitude into that DCO synth. It's subtle, but the difference is there. That sounds beautiful, but just a little bit of that filter FM. It's so cool. It's got that growly sort of character that I love. Let's morph the multimode filter. So we could pick a value that's not quite a low pass filter, which is what we have on the extremes here. You can see it's the same iconography. So like a little bit of bandpass filter, so it has almost more of like a memory Moog ladder filter type sound to it. So a lot of the times, one of the fun things you can do with MPE or Aftertouch is control the cutoff of the filter, right? So we could do that, and we could just increase that to Aftertouch here. And a feature that I've been asking for Gforce to do for forever is finally here, where you can actually set your own aftertouch curve. So on this Prophet 12, the aftertouch is pretty like on and off. So it's great that you can actually get in here and give it a little bit more of a curve, so I have some more control over that. So I can get smoother aftertouch control. And same thing with you can control the key tracking here, like where you want the middle of the key tracking to be, velocity, and even the mod wheel can have a curve. So what might be cooler than modulating the cutoff of the filter with Aftertouch is modulating the filter FM with Aftertouch. So because filter FM is touchy, we probably don't need much. just so we could get a little more purr in there if we want. What else could we do? So one thing with this type of sound is I love the way the resonance sounds in the lower register. Of course, it sounds so good, but up high it can be a little overbearing maybe. So why don't we negatively key track the filter resonance so that above a certain point it's actually lower. That way when we play up high, there's some resonance but not as much, and then down low we get that big throaty. Okay, I think I'm getting too deep again, so let's just keep moving with let's check out the arpeggiator and let's bring the envelope decay time way down, so. So that's an arpeggiator like you'd expect. You could change the rate, swing, gate length, modes. We've got up, down, played, random, octaves. But what's more interesting is we have this new generative ARP, and this can take us into some really crazy places. That's so deep and interesting. I dare not even delve into this. We could do that more in the live stream coming up, but it's there. I want you to know about it. We also have this color, which is sort of like a crossover that we can apply different amounts of effects to. So I actually think the best way to sort of hear this would be just to play a bit and scroll through, because all of this stuff, like the oscillators have presets, the filters have presets, the effects all have presets, right? So that you can get started. So let's just roll through some of these kind of quickly. You get all of these really interesting sounds. Like for instance, dust gives you this crazy texture to it. So it's not just like an EQ or something. It's really giving a lot of different flavors to make it sound more retro, or potentially if you use like pressure a lot, that gives it a more like tighter multi-band compression type sound. So let's look at the delay lines real quick. So in time, it works kind of like you would expect. So you can kind of think of this as like a multi-head tape echo, right? Where we have control over the level, the times, the pans, the individual feedbacks, and the high pass and low pass filter of all of these tape heads. So real quick, why don't we just set up a kind of a standard echo here. So I'm going to increase the time a bit, just because I like a little bit of a longer echo here. Something like this. And if we take the pan wide, it can be really big sounding. And like everything else in MAP, it doesn't just sound vanilla. Like it already has a really beautiful kind of vintage flavor, even though this plugin feels ultra modern. So this tap's a little long, so I'll just bring the feedback a bit back. I'll increase the level, and now what I want to do is actually create a chorus. So one of my favorite synthesizers, the DW8000 vintage hybrid synthesizer, has a digital delay line, and you can use it as an echo or as a chorus. So why don't we use the first two taps to make a chorus, and then the second two can be our traditional echo. So to do that, I'm going to hard pan these as well, and I'll set the times to really small values. I'm holding shift to get finer resolution, and I'll increase the level here all the way. And I'll bring the level of the echoes out just so we can hear what these first two are doing. So it's definitely wide, but it's sort of a weird sound because there's no movement. So if you think about an old Juno chorus, for instance, the way it works is by taking two delays and then modulating them actually, one positive and one negative. So we can emulate that here. We can take tap one's delay time and modulate it negatively with an LFO, and tap two times positively, and now we should get something like a chorus. That's a little extreme, so let me dial that back. So yeah, that sounds like that kind of gritty Juno chorus, and then we can just bring in these other echoes so that we have that wide sound. Yeah, it's just incredible what can be done with just a few delay lines. Okay, real quick, I'm going to turn time and color off and turn space on. Now to see this, I'm going to pull the Prophet 12 out of the way. I think you guys got the idea with what I was doing with the delay lines here. But space here, this could be a whole hour-long video just discussing this. It's like a granular reverb. It's unlike anything I've ever heard before. So again, sadly, I think the best way for me to explain it is just to roll through some presets so you can hear what it sounds like. And you can see with those high feedback times, they can go on for almost forever. 50/50 is my favorite preset. It's kind of like the closest thing to what I'm looking for most of the time. So it's sort of like everything's at a 50% value, and that seems to work really well. Also note reverse is on for this one. So these grains could be going forward or reverse. Fluttering's a really interesting effect. Really gives away how granular this can sound as opposed to like a reverb, or it could sound like a really big reverb. Just like a giant lexicon. So jumping back to filter A for a second, we have control over the routing here. So we can have it go from B into A to the outputs, or it can be parallel. So you can do interesting modulation up top and down below. In this case, I'm going to feed it from B into A. And because we've created a pretty dark sound, I just want to increase the high end a bit. And we could do that by sort of just creating a nice little amount of high-end lift here, something like that. So what we just did actually was recreate one of the 20 factory presets I made for Gforce Map called Serpentarius. And I picked this one to demonstrate what can be done with this synthesizer because it's actually the simplest. Map is so much more than I could possibly showcase in this video. So please check out this live stream if you're interested in deep diving into making your own sounds. And if you want to hear more of the presets, check out this playlist here. I'm Vulture Culture. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. There's going to be a lot more Gforce Map content coming out on this channel, so please subscribe if you haven't yet. Continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you there.